What's up, YouTube followers? I wanted to show you guys a quick inspection video. As you can see, my black car has its engine out. We mainly took the engine out because we had an issue with our faceplate, which we're rectifying now, but that's all right. But the reason why this motor came out, and I stopped actually making a lot of race videos with it, and it kind of sparked the resurrection of my white turbo car, is the fact that I've beaten the shit out of this motor for a year, since August, end of June, or excuse me, July 2015, early August, up till, pretty much end of August this year. So a good solid year. I probably put 100 plus, 150 passes on this motor, and I wanted to show the inspection. The reason why I pulled this motor out was because the crank was bent. Now, it was bent so slightly that you could barely see it, but you put a dial indicator on it, and it was definitely bent. You could see some of the inspection stuff. I only ran a girdle, had factory Cobra type rockers. I had a factory cam in it, which I'm not even going to pull out, really. But I mean, most cams have markings on the front and the back. But it's just a factory cam, folks. Nothing special. What I did notice, and if you look, and this verifies the fact that it's bent, is all my bearings looked good, except the front two. I started beating the bearings out. You can see a lot of copper showing up. This is the only bearings that actually had any copper on them, and really the front one doesn't really have that much. It's this one, right? So this is the counterweight side. This is this is one of the one of the counterweights for the crank. Now check this out. Back in July of 2015, I broke my block, the original factory block, out of it. I still have it, and I want to show you. This was the damage done when I broke the block. Does that shit look familiar? Second main, broken counterweight. And this is where it started getting hot on the new one. So this caused all that destruction. Cracked the block, broke the block, whether it was from detonation or whatever. But you can see it's the motor out of the black car. It's not something new. Factory GT iron heads. GT40 intake, everything in this block was production, except supporting parts, oil pan and oil pump. The rockers were still production. They have an F3 number on it. And you can see, if you look at my heads, there ain't no special valves in them. There ain't no porting done to them at all. Okay, so those numbers that I've been making on the dyno with this motor, multiple motors to be honest, and the power and the times that I've been running in this car, everyone said, oh, there's no way it's a stock block. Yeah, well, there it is. I'll show you the pistons. Even the pistons look really good. I didn't see any bent rods. These are factory forged pistons with factory rods. Look at that. No problem. You can see the bearings in them weren't terrible. A little bit of stuff got in them. But none of them had copper. The only copper that actually showed up in any of the parts was that number 2, which confirmed after my dial indicator that crank was bent, and it would have ended up like that crank over there that I just showed you had I kept running the car real hard. Another really cool thing is, I'm going to show you, is if I bent the crank twice now, if I can get this out, no cracking. Look at the webs. Perfect. There's no cracking in the webbing. There wasn't any cracking in the main caps. Looks really good. When I say I'm running a stock log, you see really good copper now. But you see the next bearing, which the thrust bearing has oil on it, but that's the one that should have its ass kicked. And even the rear bearing. But none of them were bad. Webbing looked good. I don't see any reason why I can't reuse this block, and which is exactly what I'm going to do. So keep tuned to what we're doing. This is a factory forged block, or not forged block, but forged internals. We didn't do anything special. One thing we did find, and this is where I want to end the video with. Check out that push rod. Found 2 of them bastards that were bent. 3 intake, 4 intake valve. Now I have to check those heads now real good to make sure that they're the valves aren't bent, which I have extra valves, so it doesn't matter. If they're factory parts, who gives a shit, right? But let's make sure they're not bent. And that tells me right there I was floating valves. So they didn't hit the pistons, but it still bent the valve. It hit the piston somewhere. Somehow the damn valve got bent. But since 3 and 4 were actually 7 and 8, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't see any damage on those, which is pretty awesome. So this block has had flipped pistons in it for a year with no problems for the most part. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just saying it works. If you're trying to build a car that's streetable, not really traveling much with it, but you want to make some power, go look it up. I'm not going to explain it to you. But that's it, guys. That's factory block, factory heads, factory intake, factory throttle body, factory pistons, rods. I mean, why would I put an aftermarket crank in? Or cam, I mean, it's... I don't think the block is the weakest point. I think it's the crank, because they're cast, and it's always going to be the counterweight in the front past the first and second journal. It's always going to be this piece right here. I have done this 3 times now. It's always going to break right here. That is the 3rd crank that we've bent. One we broke, and if you look at my videos with my coupe, we bent that crank too, in the same exact fucking spot. So keep your eye on your crank and your pulleys, guys. If you're out there boosting the shit out of these production blocks, keep an eye on your crank. Because if it starts to wobble even a little bit, and it would be deceiving, then you probably have a bent crank, and you probably should pull the motor out before you break the fucking block in half. If you don't really care, I don't really care. But since I have the time now and it's end of October, I'm actually going to put this thing back together and probably run it next week. I got another block over there in case I break it. I don't really care. The all new shit just like this. So here's the inspection. Here's the proof. It's an E7TE block, and it works.